Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room. I hope you're doing well. I think it's been quite a while since I made a video, so for those who come across this new recording, I want to tell them that I have missed them and that I hope that I will be returning to making videos on a more regular basis. Probably not with this long, thick, kind of lumberjack style beard, which makes my face look weird. I don't know. I'm not really looking at myself a lot these days. Maybe I should. So just to give you a bit of an update, I'm still in Ireland and still doing well despite the coronavirus lockdown situation. It's easing progressively. It's not ideal, and I really wish it were going faster, but what can you do? For a while I was, I guess, burnt out from making videos about Myers-Briggs, personality, MBTI, INFJ, all that jazz. But reading Jung and allowing the reading to sink in seems to have led to a process of gradual re-stimulation, and I think that I'm getting close to a stage now where I want to make videos again. I'm still sort of trying to find an angle, because if you think about it, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I've made a lot of videos about INFJ. I've made literally 200 plus videos. I've covered so much ground. I need a kind of new angle, and so I wasn't sure what that new angle would be, and I'm still not sure what it's going to be, but I'd like to go a bit more into the Jungian architecture that is at the basis of Myers-Briggs, and perhaps more specifically looking at the way in which Myers-Briggs, the MBTI model, departs from the Jungian framework. And once we've identified the departures, the particular points of departure, once we have managed to identify them, isolate them, to discuss them, and try to see whether we think that the difference looks good for MBTI, or whether it doesn't look good for MBTI, whether we prefer the Jungian approach. Older, but not necessarily less good, It's not because a theory or a model is later, comes after another and supposedly improves upon it or renders it more richer, if you like. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's better, because for a long time I think that I was under the assumption, and maybe some of you guys are as well aware, I was under the assumption that really Myers-Briggs is Jung. It's a fancy way of talking about the psychologically of types and the typology that Jung elaborated in the early 20th century, and it creates these labels like INFJ, ENFP, ISTP. It creates these labels on the basis of Jung's theory of types to, in some sense, allow people to latch onto those labels and make those labels their own and start really identifying with those labels. Explaining part of the success of the model, I'm talking about the MBTI model, and its enduring popularity, because people become really attached. People become really attached to they become attached to something that they have decided in not just a rational sense, but in a very gut-oriented sense, that it is part of who they are, it's part of their identity, and it provides an anchor to their existence. It allows them a kind of soundboard and a kind of mirror as well to look at themselves in if they reach a particular moment of doubt. I know that even in some less glorious or less bright times of my life in Geneva, for those of you who remember, I went through phases where it was really hard to deal with certain situations at work or outside of work, and there were even times when I was kind of like, what would an INFJ do? Or I would tell myself, oh, but I shouldn't really feel bad about not having managed to achieve this or adapt to that, because I'm an INFJ and those are not my strengths. So you can see how the whole idea of having a type can be a coping mechanism, but you can also see that subterraneanly, I just invented an adjective there, I'm pretty sure, it can also be a very limiting factor, because you don't want to essentialize yourself into an identity, you go beyond it. And I suppose, in my next series of videos, because I'm now making the announcement, I need to make an announcement that somehow commits me to resuming making videos, because if I don't do that, I don't trust myself to go back into a rhythm. Once I've made, let's say, 3 or 4 videos over 3 or 4 weeks, I'll get back into a rhythm, and then it will become second nature again, just part of my habits. But I just need to get back into it, so I need to give myself that kind of focus and that kind of commitment. I need to tell you guys that I'm going to do this so that I won't be able to disappoint. I think that I will be starting, maybe by looking at this broad difference. We're still at a level that is not very granular, is not very defined. We're just saying, we're saying MBTI creates these like essences, types, with their particular features, and there are boundaries which essentially tell us that we cannot be other types, these things. There's no real change. Once you're a type, you can be another type. At least according to MBTI, it's quite clear. And how does that compare to what Jung says? And what is preferable? Not just in terms of its appeal, intuitive appeal, and in terms of its descriptive power, but also in terms of its, perhaps most importantly, in terms of its adherence to reality. Like, what do we really see in reality? Do we see processes? Do we see more essential type categories? And what does Jung say in his books? And whenever MBTI Myers-Briggs depart from it, how do they justify it, and is that something that we want to stick to? Now, I'm not delusional. I know that MBTI is going to remain very influential, or at least popular, because it's an easier model, and I can't judge anyone for preferring it or for defaulting to it, because that's what I defaulted to for a long time. But now that I've read Jung and that I have internalized some of the insights, I am convinced that there are certain aspects of Jung that are not in MBTI and that are better, and that should have been kept that way. But I also think that in some respects MBTI improves on Jung's framework. So there are minuses and there are pluses, and together at some point in the near future we'll be looking at what these are. But in the meantime, and after submitting you to a kind of rambling that you probably haven't forgotten, because it is so specific and inescapable, I guess. I hope you've been doing well, and I'm telling you, yeah, see you in the next video for something less introductory and more analytical. See you guys.